Shall we do a couple board game sommeliers, Tom?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Sometimes a player just got to know which game should stay, which game should go, which to play with mama, madame, abou. You got to tell me, monsieur, just what to do. Want to make an impression, but I can't get far with my 50th player of Agricola. A million games, show me the way to the master, the game sommelier.
Another anonymous submission of a wonderful song. I will never know who made it, but thank you very much.
Whoever you are out there, just know that
They're prolific.
You're amazing, and why you're not a recording artist, I don't quite understand.
Hey, Matt and friends. I love Magic, Hearthstone, and deck building in general. My favorite is drafting, though, and I have hundreds of hours in Slay the Spire. So do I. Do you have any recommendations for a board game that can perform similarly? I'm playing Arkham Horror LCG, and it's good, but it's not quite there. I'm thinking because it doesn't have that build-on-the-go, roguelike feel. I'm not sure. Hope you can help. Thanks a bunch. Keep up the great work. I didn't write down your name because I'm not sure it was in the email, but thank you very much, whoever wrote that. I'm going to be honest with you. A good roguelike card game is what I'm looking for as well. It doesn't necessarily exist. If you hadn't said Arkham Horror LCG, that's what I would have recommended. I think that's the closest in terms of deck building and taking on adventures and doing your best in a roguelike feel.
It's too bad that our game designer is busy developing a game for the American Dental Association. Otherwise maybe he could tackle that, because that sounds like very fertile ground.
I've said it before. My favorite deck builder is Thunderstone Quest. That's a pure deck builder in the way of Dominion. I think it's the most interesting one out there. Maybe that will give you that feel as it's, but that's sort of a lemons to lemonade kind of thing, like Res Arcana a little bit, where it's sort of you look at the market and you do the best you can with it. I would love nothing more than if somebody made a Slay the Spire type game in the board game world. That's my dream too. I hope it comes. Tom, you want to read the next one?
Sure. This is from, oh my goodness, what is that name?
S.J. Bolton?
I'm going to go with S.J. Bolton.
Oh, Steve. He says Steve at the bottom.
Okay. Steve Bolton. Re-listening to the podcast, you give a basic solution to flattening warped game boards. A better, more permanent solution is what I use for old sheets of postage stamps where the gum on the rear causes them to curl up. Get a plant water mister. A squirt bottle that sprays water is a very fine mist. For stamps, I spread them out carefully on the sheet without separating the perforations with the gum side down and mist above the side that's face up.
I'm so glad I made you read this.
Oh my God, what the heck are you doing to me? Not to wetten or really moisten, but it very, very slightly moistens the top without affecting the gum. Now spread it on a baking sheet. What the heck are you doing to me?
This is the most in the weeds email we've ever gotten. I love it.
Set your oven at... No, it doesn't say that.
Look, this person is just giving you... I talked about how to flatten board game components.
Oh, I remember. You said Heavy Dictionary.
Sent me a 4-paragraph long explanation of a better way to do it, and I appreciate that, Steve.
Do you think we could put this up on the website? I think we could. I think we should put this on the website rather than reading the whole thing, because it is OCD heavy involved.
Look,
and
get a plant water mister is the TLDR of this.
It's got 7 other steps to it, though. There's a lot. It's pretty intense, but listen.
I love it. I just appreciated this email a lot, Steve.
Oh, I love it too.
This is as in the weeds as we could possibly get.
But guess what? At least once a year, I'll pull a game out, and the boards will be warped.
Well,
and I desperately need something like this. Evidently, I do.
All right. The next is from Mike Barton. I love this podcast. Thanks, Mike. I just recently discovered it and have been listening through all your episodes on my daily bike rides. Your group seems so fun. I have 3 kids, age 8, 11, and 13. We've played through Settlers of Catan and many expansions. We loved Pandemic Season 1. I recently tried Scythe with them, but that was a little over their heads. Do you have any recommendations for strategy board games that both them and I would enjoy together? Thanks for your help, and keep up the great work, Mike. My recommendation here is Century Spice Roads, the Century series.
Sure.
The first one being Spice Road, the second one being Eastern something. I always forget the name of it. And the third one is A New World. The whole trilogy is out now. And why I think this is going to be sort of one of my go-to Euro gateways is that you can build it in stages. And it will teach you the 3 sort of main mechanics of Euro modern board games. The first one's going to teach you engine building. The second one's going to teach you route building. The third one is going to teach you worker placement. If you own all 3 of these, they all combine together by the end. So you can sort of teach someone modern Euro gaming in stages. And I think that's why the designer made these games. I think this is a 101 Euro gaming lesson. that you can literally, you play one, then you play the next one, and then you can combine them into a more complicated game. Then you play the third one, and you can combine all three into a game that has all of these modern Euro classics involved now. And I think by the end of your children learning all three of these games, they will be ready for pretty much any medium weight Euro.
I think that's great. Listen, for kids that age, I have kids that age, so I'm right there with you. I think the key is you're looking for a relatively easy teach, strategic depth, and relatively short playing time. If you can get those three things together, then you have a game that is going to captivate them. I would recommend a game called Istanbul. It's pretty short, it's pretty small box, it's pretty simple and easy to play.
Placement.
Worker placement, worker movement.
Yep.
It's a race game. You're racing to get a certain number of rubies. Very fun game, very well designed, a really good one. I will also say that I always recommend Castles of Mad King Ludwig.
Yeah, you love that game.
It is.
I've never played it. I keep wanting to.
For kids, it is.
It's a polyomino thing,
game.
right?
Not. I mean, it's not. No, it's not polyominoes. It is different sized rooms that will go into your castle.
Okay.
One person is the auctioneer, and he is choosing which piece is going to be auctioned at 1,000 florin, which one is at 3,000, all the way up to 15,000 florin. He gets the money from the auction. Other people get the pieces, and they put them into their castle. And figuring out how to make a castle work. The great thing about the game is that we just did it at the church event. We had 89 people show up for game night.
Oh, wow.
People who had never played this game start playing it, and by the end of the game, they count up their score, they figure out who won, and they have the exact discussion. I didn't talk to them about it at all, but they have the exact same discussion that my family does whenever we play the game, which is after you've scored the game and figure out who won, you have another whole debate and conversation about whose castle you'd want to live in. Like your castle has got the billiards room and it's got the the garden and it's got the jousting field and this sort of stuff. But mine has got the dungeon and the queen's bedroom and the this and then that and the other thing. And it's really, really a lot of fun.
What was the biggest hit from this 89-person game night?
The biggest hit. The people who played Splendor for the first time absolutely loved it. I would also put that into the game, which, by the way, is a lot like Century Road, right?
Yeah, I prefer Century Road. Is a slightly more complicated version of it, but I think more fun.
People played Bonanza, Uwe Rosenberg. Yeah. It's a great game for people this age. But the biggest hit was the hit I took because there was this father and son who were at the game night. Who were looking for something to play and wanted to play something, and the only game they knew from this was Settlers of Catan. So, guess what I played?
Castles of... Oh, you played Settlers of Catan. No, really?
I played Settlers of Catan.
Did you win? Did you beat them?
Of course I made sure the kid won. Good. Are you kidding me? Come on.
You want to read the next one for us?
Absolutely. Hi, Matt. Jason from Cleveland here. Das habe ich down in Cleveland. Sometimes my game group is just my friend Kevin and I.
Me too.
And the other week we didn't have enough time to play Spirit Island. Instead, we played a few lighter, shorter games such as Boss Monster that didn't scratch the itch the way heavier, more strategic games do.
No, it would not.
What games do you recommend for two that are more complex and strategic, but can be played in 30 minutes or less? Thank you so much. Loving the podcast. Helps me get through work and gets me pumped to play more games. Best, Jason.
You got a rec here, Tom?
Yeah, I got a couple. I think Patchwork was Uwe Rosenberg again, but
it's pretty light.
But it's pretty strategic. I mean, you can two people that are playing it hardcore. I know. You and Rachel play it a lot, but if you and Paul play that game, it would be it can be a little brutal.
I think they're looking for something a little heavier, though.
It can get brutal. Azul, I think is a great game that fits that mic. And then you get into things like what's the guys who did Twilight Struggle did the JFK era game.
1960 Making of a President?
Yes.
Well, I'm going to
maybe a little bit longer than 30 minutes, but
I'm going to recommend a 30-minute game that is very similar to Twilight Struggle, apparently, that I'm very excited about. So coming, literally shipping in the next 2 weeks and debuting at Gen Con is Watergate from Capstone Games, which is very much the goal of it being Twilight Struggle in 30 minutes. I've read the rules. I'm very excited for it. I should have it in the next week or so. I imagine we'll be doing a review of it soon, but I'm very excited for a 30-minute Twilight Struggle.
Oh, I would love it.
Yeah, and it looks pretty legit. So I would check that out. It's shipping from Capstone in the next week or two. I think their pre-orders are still open. Otherwise, it will debut officially at Gen Con in August and probably hit normal retail not long after that.
Okay.
But that's an exciting game to me.
Sounds great.
Let's do one more. Hello from Minnesota. Sometimes games have brilliant new themes or mechanisms, but aren't enough to make the game itself shine. For example, I love the novel take Vasco da Gama had on the bidding of turn order, though the game itself had some problems. Likewise with Mombasa's 3 discard piles. I'd love to hear you discuss what are some of your favorite specific mechanics in games you didn't like. What a great question. Thanks, Dave Funkanel. I believe I pronounced that correctly. I have no idea.
You have no idea?
I have no idea if I pronounced it correctly.
Oh, okay. I have
games
no idea.
with mechanics you love that you didn't like the game.
I guess that's a good question. To me, when I think of great mechanics, I think of a game that I actually do love, but I've never seen anybody do that mechanic again.
Okay.
I think of Taj Mahal.
Oh.
Taj Mahal is a game in which you have a hand of cards and you are playing these cards 1 to 2 at a time, and everybody is playing until people basically go out. Right? You're trying to get a higher total.
It's almost like a trick-taking game.
It almost is. It plays a little bit like poker in some ways.
Yeah.
It's very interesting, and if I was designing a game today, I would see if I could find a new way to use that mechanic. But I actually do love that game. But it is one of those mechanics that I find just absolutely fascinating.
To me, the game that comes to mind when I read your email was Spirit Island. Now, this is a beloved game. People love Spirit Island. I'd put in at my top 3 biggest disappointments in board games, and not because of anything the game did. I just don't like cooperative putting out fire games. I'm not interested in playing Pandemic. I don't enjoy it. I don't enjoy 4 people sitting around a table and solving a cooperative puzzle. That's just not fun to me. And I was so surprised because it has 2 of my favorite things in the whole world, which is asymmetrical powers, card-based engine building.
Yep.
That's all it is. And when I first read the rules, I was like, oh, this is my dream game. But then I sat around and played it probably 4 or 5 times, and I was just like, it's just Pandemic. I don't get excited by somebody at the table going, guys, I'm going to put out all these fires over here. How are your fires doing? Like, oh, great. Did we put out all the fires? Yay, we won. I just found it so boring.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get that. Now that I think about it, we played Impulse only once, but we played it by Carl Chuddock, and it didn't quite come together. It's not quite a full game. But the idea of doing a 4X space exploration game where the map is cards, and as you explore it, you flip the card over, and that system gives you a certain ability.
Sure.
So control of these systems are literally control of extra abilities that you have on your turn. I think is a great idea.
Yeah.
It just didn't quite work in that game.
I definitely would want to give that game another shot. It was a heavy game, heavier than I think we anticipated.
Yeah, I think that's true. But it's heavy and swingy, and that's a tough combination.
That's true.
Tough
that is
combination.
Very true. And often with his games, that is the case. All right, this first email is from Rick. Hey guys, love the show and that you talk about going to conventions a few times a year. I'm going to my first one next month, and I'm just wondering what to expect. Long Island Retro Gaming Expo, Tabletop Gaming Expo. The schedule lists certain games available at certain times. Is this to go and play games I already know, or should I plan those times to try games I've never played and they'll be taught? Any recommendations for attending my first convention? You go to a lot of conventions, Elder. You want to help Rick out?
I just got these images in my head of what to expect, and it was just pizza, chips,
BO.
Exactly, body odor. So bring some deodorant spray, maybe some incense. I don't know. It's a fun experience. I mean, I think the thing that I like most about cons, and I mean, I guess I'm most familiar with Strategic Con, but I think I had this experience with Gen Con as well, maybe even more so. It's just that, it's like we wouldn't be doing this or a lot of the stuff that we do if we didn't just absolutely adore games.
Yeah.
And people that go to cons play games so they drop.
Yeah, that's it.
It's 3 or 4. I mean, you just literally, again, I'm thinking of all these images pass in my head, and one image is just somebody passed out in a chair on the floor, just exhausted from gaming. And I think that's a beautiful thing. So, I mean, to answer this person's question, again, I think every con is a little bit different.
Yeah.
And I just would expect to, play a lot of games. And I think also cons are a great time to not just play kind of maybe some favorite games that you haven't played in a while, but also it's great to learn new games and to, play games with people that you never played before.
Yeah. I mean, to me, there's a few, the three main reasons I go to a con are to play new games that aren't out yet, or hopefully buy some, to play games all day long, and probably games I already know, maybe some new ones, maybe learn a few new games, but just play with people that are there.
Yep.
And the other one is to, which I don't really do, would be to play competitively, to sign up for a game tournament. So I think most likely what you're looking at on your schedule is, I would imagine, either demos or tournaments, or maybe not a tournament, but a scheduled time to play the game competitively.
Yeah. And also what's happening now, I know at Strategicon and probably at other game conventions too, I think the game design as an art form or as a pursuit is becoming more relevant, right?
Yeah.
And so you might have an opportunity to play a game and give some feedback on a game that's still in the design process.
That's right, yeah,
that
play
hasn't been
testing.
published yet,
Yeah.
play test, yeah. It's also an opportunity to meet possibly a game designer that you maybe that you're a fan of, or discover. I actually just met at Comic-Con. I met a game designer. What's the big game that he did? What's the game?
This is my favorite game, by the way. Figuring out games.
The game with that's about stained glass.
Sagrada.
Sagrada. I met the designer of Sagrada.
Oh, nice.
At Comic-Con, and he had a bunch.
He sent me my copy of Sagrada. Such a nice guy.
Yeah, he's a very cool guy.
Yeah.
He's Canadian, which I didn't know Canada was producing game designers like that. But
Eric M. Lang is Canadian, if I'm correct. I believe so.
There you go. So, but he was very cool. I played another one of his games that I really enjoyed.
Adrian Adamescu is his name.
Yep. He did a game about these little robots. It was a kind of a steampunk theme.
Let's see. He's got Rival King, Speakeasy Blues. Let's check. There's two designers on it, actually. There's also Daryl Andrews. Let's check Daryl. Daryl is the one who sent me the game, I believe. Daryl was the one that I had talked with online. City of Gears.
Yes.
So you met
City of
Daryl
Gears.
Andrews then.
Oh, I met Daryl. Okay.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah. City of Gears was a fun game. I enjoyed that. And he had a couple other designs that were there on the table.
He's been designing for a while. That came out in 2012.
Yeah, and he's designed I think they said somewhere between 40 and 50 games. Like he's got quite a few games.
Sagrada's fun. Sagrada's a great little. I mean, I prefer it to Azul in terms of those sort of placement games. But I think it's a pretty awesome game.
Yep.
Next question. This is from Steve Bolton. I've got a pinball question here. Question for host regarding pinball. Since you are familiar with changes for pinball game technology, I was wondering if central flipper controls exist. I only have one working arm and wonder if the game tech caters for disabilities. I'm sure there are people that can customize, etc., but the possibility is way beyond my budget. Secondly, I think all theme songs on the podcast should include the Sommelier. He's so awesome. It'd be like the thrill of watching the Muppet Show and the Swedish Chef appears. He said, showing my age. Now, so I don't know of any central, I think you called it a central flipper control, but there are pinball tournaments where one person takes a flipper. Yeah. And another person takes a flipper. And they actually have tournaments for that. I'm forgetting the name of it right now, but it's basically team pinball where you and another person each take a flipper. I think that's totally a fun. I've actually played that. I think it's a super fun way to play pinball. And there's like strategy involved in it. You have to communicate with the other person. I would totally look into that.
Wow. Yeah.
Next question is from Luke Jameson. My friends and I only occasionally get together to play games. So when we do play games, that are familiar to us, like Codenames, and when we do, we play games that are familiar to us, like Codenames and Suro. One game we always bring out is Dominion with the Hinterlands and Prosperity expansions. When we play, we often go the route of each of us choosing a few cards and starting a game from our ideas blended together. I feel like it keeps us in our comfort zones, and I think we might need to expand our thinking a bit. For example, we avoid the curse cards for the most part. Can you recommend some of your favorite ways of choosing cards in Dominion, or if possible, even some of your favorite game setups? If my current setup of expansions is less than adequate, what ones might you add? Lastly, you said you moved onto a different deck building game and got rid of the others. What is it about Dominion that caused you to move on? And if many deck building games are similar, what did this new game do to set it apart? Much love to the wonderful pod, Luke.
Sounds like a lot of questions.
Yeah. Do you play Dominion?
I don't actually. I'm not a Dominion player. That's one of those that I missed the boat on.
Right.
I'm familiar with it. And
are there any deck builders that you enjoy or have?
I'm not actually a big fan of deck builders.
Gotcha.
I think, and it's not that I'm against. I think the mechanic of deck building is actually kind of interesting. I'm actually prototyping a kind of like a deck building game right now, or has a deck building component to it. I would point the person probably towards the Geek, which is a great resource. I would imagine that there's got to be tons of threads where people are sharing their different setups.
Dominion setups, yeah. So your question is exactly why I sold Dominion, because I didn't like the randomness of just totally random setups, and sometimes there being just crappy combinations of cards. The game is not easy to set up. It takes 20 minutes to set up, and I don't want to set up a random collection of cards that have no synergy and no combos and are just sort of crappy. Yeah. And I feel like that happened a lot, especially the more expansions I got, the more that happened as I sort of watered down the pool. Yep. And the reason that I sold it and replaced it with what is it? The game we played this week that I just talked about. Thunderstone Quest. The reason I placed it with Thunderstone Quest is that Thunderstone Quest does not do random setups, and in fact gives you 20 scenarios that are all balanced around awesome combinations of cards that give multiple strategies for winning. So like it tells you, pick this scenario, here's all the cards in it. And every time I've played, at least, I've never found one yet that doesn't. You always quickly find, there's 2 or 3 different routes to victory here, and now it's a fun race to see who can do it fastest, and maybe even try to find some kind of cool combo that's hidden in there. But that to me is exactly why I moved on from Dominion and moved on to because I didn't want to just have bad games because of random cards. I wanted somebody to go, here's 20 great combinations of cards, pick one.
Right.
And that to me was a better use of my time. Brad Willis, really enjoying the podcast in each of the segments. Thanks for being entertaining and informative. You're welcome, Brad. I have recently been diving into the dudes on a map genre. I have Tyrants of the Underdark and love it. Kemet and Innis have quickly risen up to the top of my wish list. What are your thoughts on those 2 games, and what are your favorite DOAM games, dudes on a map games?
Kemet.
You like Kemet?
I do.
Yeah, Kemet's fun. I sold Kemet.
Duly noted.
I didn't like the shopping aspect of it. To me, it felt like you have this giant tableau of asymmetrical powers out there, and it kind of felt like there was a few that were auto buys, and then everything after that is just sort of filling out what you need in the moment, and it felt a little samey to me after a while. And I also felt like it took up too much table space for how good it was. It takes up like a massive amount of space. I don't know. I just didn't love it. I also replaced it with my favorite Dudes on the Map game, which is Lords of Hellas.
There you go.
So that would be my recommendation. I think Lords of Hellas is really fun and thematic, and has really cool. There are many ways the game can end. There are many different victory conditions, and I think they're all interesting and fun. And I think it feels like a different game every time. It's pretty heavy and pretty long. I don't know. I think Lords of Hellas. It made me think I don't need another Dudes on the Map game.
Cool.
So there you go. Hi, Matt. Longtime listener to Get Up On This and love the new pod. You talk about regular game groups, and mine consists of my wife and kids, age 13, 6, and now 4. That's amazing. I've managed to teach my wife and oldest kid how to play Pandemic and TTR, which is Ticket to Ride. Yep. My younger 2 have learned and enjoyed games such as Castle Panic and Sushi Go. Personally, I'm into heavier games and have played games along the lines of Dead of Winter, and I'm a longtime D&D player. I'm in need of 2 recommendations. What would you recommend as a step up for my younger 2, but is also enjoyable for the rest of us? I could also use a recommendation on a game that could be played with either just my wife and/or could be extended to include up to 5. My wife and oldest kid tend to enjoy cooperative games, so if you could recommend something along those lines, I'd appreciate it. Well, I think Splendor.
Splendor is I know we recommend it like all too often.
Yeah.
But it's so good.
I think Splendor. I think Century Spice Road is also good. Maybe even a little prettier than Splendor, a little easier to get to the table. I think that could work for your whole family. I mean,
I think these polyagonal games could also be really good.
Patchwork, which is only 2, but yeah. There's Haba, Haba, which is they make games for young children, but a lot of them are really fun and for everybody, and they're really good family-friendly games. Rhino Hero is sort of a fun dexterity game that everybody could get into. I think those are some pretty.
But it
good
sounds like those
recommendations.
kids are maybe ready for some heaviness because you know what? Like, I mean, it sounds like they're already playing. Some
Castle
games that
Panic
are
and
decent.
Sushi Go are great. I mean, Pandemic is fun. It's everybody can sort of get down with it. And
I wonder if the theme's a little heavy.
potentially, yeah. I mean, it's but I think Castle Panic is not too far off from that. I mean, not in terms of gameplay, not theme. Games for you and your wife, or could be expanded to include up to 5.
That could be cooperative.
That could be, yeah. I would, if for competitive, I'd recommend Concordia. That's sort of my go-to medium weight game that can play up to 6, actually, if you have the expansion. But in terms of cooperative games, I mean, Gloomhaven is definitely too heavy.
Seventh Wonder is more of a one player.
Yeah,
kind of
it
jam.
can play with more. It's also just wildly expensive and hard to get.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. We don't play a ton of cooperative games, so it gets a little tricky.
I mean, what's that one where you're all deities around a map? That might be a little heavy theme-wise, too. You're deities, and you're taking over from the colonizers that are coming in.
Oh, Spirit Island.
Spirit Island?
Yeah, Spirit Island. Yeah, that's a little heavy, but it's an interesting game and beautiful. And
It's kind of co-op.
it could be a little heavy, I think, that one. Yeah. Yeah, we're not the co-op experts around here, as we just talked about in our Snivel section. Yeah. But hopefully those are some good recommendations for you. All right, last one. I'm looking for some game ideas to bring to my friend's bachelorette party weekend. There will be about 20 people staying in a cabin for a weekend, and so games for bigger groups would be awesome. They are definitely a mixed level of skill and interest, but the married couple to be definitely are interested in games on at least an intermediate level. Any suggestion would be great. Thanks, David. So for large groups, I mean, I think you're going to be looking at 2 Rooms and a Boom, which is fun. I think you're looking
Some
at
kind of writing game like we've been playing.
just one would be really good. That plays up to 8, I believe.
What's that one with an unlimited number of players where you're like looking at the best path?
Ricochet Robots.
Ricochet
Robots could be interesting.
I would recommend not playing a line game on your new journey into marriedhood because that will cause some schisms.
Cockroach
potentially.
Poker can be fun. Definitely fast and silly. The Mind is also just a fun game to play with
that
people.
one, yeah.
But that doesn't play for up to 20. That's only a couple people.
But I can imagine like Mysterium doing really well if you just could section off, get some more of the heavier people, or not because it's not a heavy game, but like just some people were down with some time.
Yep. Time's Up Title Recall that we always recommend, which is sort of a version of Celebrity. Wits and Wagers is also just fun. Everybody owns Wits and Wagers.
Just do a LARP.
Just do that. Yeah. I mean, Blood in the Clock Tower, which is the new sort of heavy version of Avalon type games. That's coming out soon. That plays up to 20, I believe.
There you go. Perfect.
There you go. Michael M. Going on a long-term international trip soon. What are the most flyable games for someone who likes to pack light? Or the best games to learn with a regular 52 deck before I go? Thanks, homies. In terms of the 52 deck, I would recommend that you check out Shut Up and Sit Down. They've been doing this great series lately where they introduce you to great games that can be played with any deck of cards. And I think it is a wonderful and valuable thing. And I actually learned a bunch of card games I had never even heard of before. So check out Shut Up and Sit Down's YouTube channel or through their website. And they check out the whole series they have on awesome card games.
I want to add teacher to that can be played with a regular deck plus 4 cards.
Sure. My favorite solo game to travel with would be Renegade. Ricky Royal, that we had on the podcast a little while back, designed a wonderful game that is Netrunner meets this awesome Mage Knight sort of deck building, moving around on tiles with this cool cyberpunk theme. It's very small box. You can actually take it out of the box and throw it in a little baggie and take the whole game with you. But the amount of space it takes up in a bag comparable to the amount of gameplay and variability it gives you is massive. So check out Renegade. Games that you can like throw literally in your pocket or in a backpack and bring with you. Love Letter. You can always throw that in your bag and travel if you want to be playing with other people.
The Mind.
The
which is a
Mind,
game we also
very
mentioned.
easy. And if you have, you can take this out of the box and probably fit it in one Ziploc bag as well as Watergate. The board takes up a little space, but you can fold it up and throw it in your bag. I think Watergate is a wonderful 2-player game that you could take pretty much anywhere with you on international travel. Next question.
They may not let you back into the U.S.
That is correct. Rob Blick. My friends and I love Great Western Trail, but after playing it the last 6 game nights, we got the expansion 3 game nights ago, we are ready for something else. We like Power Grid, and we're thinking about trying Brass. We do not play 18xx games or anything super heavy, since we usually only play once a month, twice if we are lucky. So we try to avoid games with tricky, subtle rules. With that in mind, which version of Brass do you suggest, or is there something else you would recommend?
The second one, definitely.
Yes, of the 2 versions of Brass that are out right now, I prefer Brass Birmingham, but I honestly believe you cannot go wrong with either one of them. Brass Birmingham is actually a little bit more complicated, but also potentially a little more forgiving. I might be wrong on that. I have to play both. I've only been playing Brass recently. I haven't played Lancashire since they came out.
It's an interesting example of when you add 2 or 3 rules, the whole thing kind of makes more sense, at least in my mind. I also prefer the artwork.
But I'm going to go ahead and not recommend either Brass for you if you are saying you don't want super heavy games because you only meet once a month or so. Brass is a super heavy game that will only reward multiple plays. Your first few games of it, you will be fumbling, trying to even figure out what to do. Brass is super heavy. Brass is not a simple game. And I think if you're looking for something that you can really sink your teeth into in one play or so, I would steer you away from that and instead steer you towards games that I would put in the same category as Great Western Trail, which you guys really liked. I would say Trois, Lorenzo Il Magnifico, Terraforming Mars, and The Journeys of Marco Polo.
And I'll add Teotihuacan to that.
Teotihuacan, absolutely. I think all those games are solid, slightly heavy medium weight games, but on the heavy side of them. But I would put all those in the same category I'd put Great Western Trail. I would not put Brass into the same category as Great Western Trail.
I want to say that for your purposes, all the games that Matt just mentioned have, for me, an additional usefulness that the rules are sticky. Mm-hmm. Once you unpack a game, even if you haven't played it in 2 months, it's going to be fairly quick for you to remember, oh, this is for this is for that.
Yep.
There's something intuitive about how the boards are arranged.
Yep.
So you'll find yourself remembering it as you go along, like I have.
As someone who's played Brass a dozen times, I still sit down and have to be totally refreshed on how to play it again because it's a really heavy game. Last one. Will, I'm a new listener drawn in by the Ricky Royal Pamir 2E talk. I'm loving the show and exploring old episodes piecemeal. I just finished the Estates episode in which you say you've never played Montanai and blame the fact that they're difficult to get a hold of. I imagine this has already been addressed in the past month and a half, but if not, both games are now available from Asmati Games website, 50% off, yada, yada. I haven't gotten my Impulse played yet, but Montanai is required reading for a fan of Glory to Rome. Similar, some prefer it. For my part, better at 2 players. Loving the podcast so far. Keep up the great work. Thank you, Will. We played Impulse a couple weeks back. Remember, Tom brought a copy. You played it as well. It was the little space card game with rockets.
Yes.
Felt very heavy. Felt very complicated. All Carl Chuddick games hurt my brain, but I love them. This one felt like I needed at least 1 or 2 more plays of it to even grok it. It seemed like there's a lot going on. It's hard to teach a Charles Chuddick game at the end of the night, which Tom had done after we'd already played something. I wasn't like wildly excited to get back to it. I have not played Montanai. I will definitely check that out. I'll play any Carl Chuddick game. I love Glory to Rome and Innovation and Red 7. So we'll definitely check out Montanai. Not like wildly excited to get back to Impulse, but if it was brought out to the table, I would try to learn it again. Your thoughts, Dimitri? You remember playing it?
I actually don't. And I apologize. I think there is a certain kind of game, a certain genre of game that is really orthogonal to what I'm about, where the player interaction supersedes narrative. I like games that tell strong stories.
Right.
And like Ben Hoyt accuses it of being parallel play, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or was it Ben Hoyt or somebody else who said
don't know.
that? Yeah, but I prefer parallel play. Like in some ways, because I want to feel like, oh, the game is teaching me something, it's taking me somewhere, and if I have to do all the heavy lifting myself, my mind starts to think about all the ways that it too could have been improved.
Hey, if you enjoyed that video, you very well might enjoy the other videos you now see being suggested to you on screen. Also, we'd greatly appreciate it if you could like, share, or subscribe to our Game Brain channel. Thanks so much.